Hello everyone, I'm Dave and welcome to this behind the scenes video on my new instrumental album, Creation. This is a 10-track instrumental album and you can find links to it in the YouTube description on YouTube and Spotify. So in this video I'm kind of going to go through each of the songs, talk a bit about why I wrote them, any kind of production techniques I used. I'll open it up in Ableton and we can have a look at that. And hopefully you'll find it kind of interesting to hear a bit more about the songs and kind of the overall themes of the album. So I kind of started this project over a year ago actually. I've been listening to a lot of instrumental music in the mornings when I was praying and reading my Bible and stuff, and I really found that the instrumental music helped me to focus. And so I was inspired to kind of write some of my own music and have a go at it. So I wrote one track just over a year ago, and I got some really good feedback on that, and I was kind of inspired. I thought, yeah, I could have a go at this. I could, grow my production skills and my composition and kind of musical skills in general, and kind of learn a whole new thing really. So I didn't do much with it last year because of moving house and lots of other stuff happening. But this year with the pandemic situation and the lockdown and everything, that kind of gave me the time to really spend on this. And so over kind of since about April, I've been written another 8 or so tracks to kind of form this album, all with a kind of creation theme. So as I was writing, I was imagining a lot of different parts of nature, so whether it was like a mountain or the ocean or like rain or different parts of nature, and that kind of inspired a lot of the writing. So I'll kind of go through each of the tracks now. I'll talk a bit about them and we'll have a look at them in Ableton. So the album starts off with this track called Intro, which is a very original name, but I kind of wanted a track that would sort of set the scene of the album, that would kind of build really slowly and introduce everything, and then kind of have a mirrored track, outro, which would kind of finish off the album in the same way that it started, kind of like a sort of mirror image, I guess. And I was really inspired by a song that a guy called John Headley did a few years ago called BCAD, I think, one of his albums. And that kind of builds really nicely from a kind of quiet point up to the end of the track. And it also, the chord pattern that he uses kind of sounds like it's building as well. So that's what I was kind of going for on this track. He uses some sounds and stuff that I've kind of worked on over the last few years, and kind of, I guess that's something that was cool about this project. Sounds that I've worked on, that I've created, I was able to kind of bring together and sort of use in new ways, which was cool. So I'll open up the project file in Ableton and we'll have a look at that. Cool, so we're here in the set for intro and outro, so they're in the same file because they're kind of like a mirror image of each one. So if we just start playing it, so intro kind of starts off with this sort of, I guess, rhythmic kind of pad sound. So if I just solo that. And this is actually a kind of vocal sample. So there's this vocal plugin I used called Exhale, which I got a couple of years ago, which is really good. It's got a whole load of different kind of vocal samples, and then they've kind of played around with them, and they've got a whole kind of engine here to tweak them and stuff. So you can get some really kind of organic sounds or vocal leads and all sorts of stuff. And you can kind of tweak the raw samples and make some really cool sounding things. There's also this kind of distortion sound layer on top of that. And then we've got the CS80 Yamaha strings, which sound really nice. I really love these vintage strings. So this is Omnisphere. I use this a lot for my synths and a lot of the lead sounds as well, for pads and stuff. And then we're getting this main kind of stab sound, which is kind of what gives it the different feel of the track, which starts to happen around here. And you start to get that kind of rhythm sound to it. Sounds quite different if we get rid of that. And that's using this plugin called Tau, which is an emulation of a Juno 60 synth, which is really good, really great for leads and kind of retro synth kind of sound. Got another ARP here, some bass, and then here's a kind of, this is another this is, I guess, the main vocal lead of this song. So a lot of my songs on this album use kind of vocal leads because it gives it a really kind of organic sound. Yeah, so that's the kind of track, and then it fades out. So if I jump to the outro, I'll show you that while we're here. We've got the bass is a lot louder here. I really like this sound. And the drums, so I've added a whole load of effects on these. So yeah, we've got saturation, we've got, you can hear there the bit crushers really doing a load of stuff to make it sound distorted. It sounds really cool. Got the same stabs and strings and stuff from earlier. And the vocal leads back as well. Cool, so yeah, that's intro. So the second track on the album is called Rain, and this is one that I started last year and kind of finished off this year. So I had the chord pattern and the kind of main piano part last year, and then this year I added in some drums and some kind of original recordings. So I got a mic early this year, and when it was raining I sort of dangled it out the window and recorded these birds chirping and some rain sounds and added that in on the top of this track. And I think it sounds really nice kind of subtly in the background and connects it to its name, Rain, and kind of makes it feel much more organic than it would otherwise. Yeah, so that's Rain, and let me just open it up, I'll show you that. Right, so here we are in Rain. So yeah, we start off with this called a piano, which is a really nice piano library from Native Instruments, which is this kind of felt piano. It sounds really nice. You can get loads of cool effects and textures on the kind of fabrics that are placed on the piano and stuff. Sounds really nice. And here we've got really quietly, this is the recording that I did outside my window of all the birds and stuff and rain. It's really quiet at this point. Got a bit of a kind of organy shimmery pad here. And this is using Valhalla shimmer on this, which makes it sound really nice. Yeah, so this builds a bit, and then we get some Rhodes bass. Now I find Rhodes works really nicely as a bass. There's quite a few different Rhodes basses in Keyscape that you can get. I think it sounds really nice, really kind of soft, but there's some kind of texture and harmonics to it. I've got some kick coming in here. This has got a load of processing in it. So this is a kick from Contact. And then the snare's also reversed. I've got it playing slightly before it. So just the reversed one on its own. Yeah, so I think that makes it sound really nice. I've got a bit of a shaker here. So a lot of these drum samples come from a library that Josh Boyle recommended, which is Noise Home Drums. So some really good sounds on here. Yeah, so it's pretty piano-led, pretty chilled with this kind of rainy and bird sort of undersound going for it. So the third track on the album is called Sand, and this is quite different to the other tracks. It's not very ambient, it's got a lot of energy, a kind of summery vibe. And this was inspired by a band called Forever Free. They're a worship band, and they did an album a couple of years ago where a lot of the songs were very kind of inspired by sort of world percussion instruments, so like xylophones, steel drums, marimbas, kalimbas, all that stuff. And I really wanted to create a track with that kind of feel. So I started kind of messing around with some different sounds and layering things when we were on a family holiday in Wales. And then when I got back home, I kind of came up with the overall structure of the song and filled in some blanks. One interesting thing that I'll show you in a second was I didn't have all the sounds I needed in my plugins in Ableton, so I sampled my Roland keyboards and to kind of get all those extra things. Yeah, so let's have a look at that in Ableton. Okay, so here we are loading up Sand. As I said, this has kind of got quite a different vibe to it. So we've got a load of percussive instruments. So we start off with this marimba sound. Now, I mentioned about a lot of these sounds I didn't have in Omnisphere or other plugins. So a lot of them I sampled from my Roland keyboard that I got quite a few years ago now. And it had a lot more of these kind of instruments. So I actually just went through every key and just sampled every note. And then just like put them on a drum rack like this. It's a bit hacky, but it does work, and I think it sounds quite good. So we start with this kind of, let me just show you. Oh, this has got some delay on it. If I take off the delay and reverb, sounds quite boring. The delay and then the reverb makes a big difference. And then you got this kind of moved bass, which sounds really nice. With our bongos, I kind of had this bongo loop that I got from Noise Home, and I started it off kind of pitched down a bit, so I've pitched it down, and then it kind of, the bongos go up to normal pitch here, which kind of really help builds it. Let's pad all the way through. Oh, then we get this really nice thing here. This is a Roland steel drum sound. And I was just like messing around, and it doesn't sound like this note should work at all on its own. But I think it sounds really nice in the overall mix. Get a bit of a rotate on there. EDM piano here. Oh, this one's a keyscape piano. What one's this? Okay, so this is a C7, but like a really hard variant of it. Yeah, some good rototoms there. Thanks for Josh Ball for the tip there. These are just Ableton stock drums with a load of reverb on them. We kind of have this little breakdown section here, and the bongos come back in. Then we get a bit of rototoms, and then go back into a sort of big ending. Kind of some sub bass here. And there's a whole load of different layers here. So we've got this one, which I really like. And then there's some vibraphone stuff. Kind of the Glock lead there. There's some Yamaha DX7 with some extra Glock sounds. And then there's kalimba as well. Cool. And that's the end of sound. So the next track on the album is Mountain. And this song was always called Mountain. Some of the songs I kind of started off calling them like Instrumental 1 or Instrumental 5 or whatever, and then came up with the name later. But this kind of always was Mountain to me, mainly because of the main kind of vocal lead sound. So there's a track called Sitting Near the Sun by Young Collective, which I really like. And he starts off this track with this kind of really ambient vocal lead, and then it kind of builds from there. And when I was listening to it, it reminded me of kind of a mountain, and sort of maybe like cooling from one mountain to another. So that was kind of my inspiration. When I was building this track, I was kind of really struggling to get it to sound good. I tried it a few times, kind of played around with it, and it wasn't really working. And I thought, right, well, I'll just mute the lead part, that kind of vocal lead, and sort of work on the rest of it. And when I did that, I thought it sounds so much better, which was kind of weird without the main lead part. And what I realised was it was actually kind of overpowering the rest of the sound too much. So I brought it down, and then the whole thing kind of came together. Yeah, so let's have a look at Mountain in Ableton. So we start off sort of pad here, and then this is the kind of lead part that I turned down that I spoke about. So this is Exhale again. Oh wow, yeah, without the reverb it sounds like really different, doesn't it? Yeah, so one plugin I used a lot was this BBC Symphony Orchestra plugin from Spitfire Audio. And they were actually giving this away for free. I don't know if they still are, but if they are, I really recommend getting it. It's a really good introduction to an orchestra library. So we've got a few layers here, we've got some violins. And we get this lead electric part here, which would be much better sounding on the real electric, but because I've got so much reverb on it and stuff, I think it works. Oh, we've got like an acoustic guitar ARP here. That's pretty much Mountain. Yeah, so we're at the sort of halfway point of the album with this track called Interlude. And this is very different probably to all the other ones. I was really inspired by a song called The Wizard by M83. And what he does in that track is kind of start off with a kind of really sort of, I guess, distorted, kind of low frequency, sort of VHS quality, like old sounding synth. And then as the track kind of builds, like halfway through, it kind of reveals all the sort of full frequency spectrum of all the sounds, and it kind of really opens up and sounds really cool. So that was kind of my inspiration for this track. So there was quite a lot of effects that I put on the main kind of synth sound, which I'll show you. And yeah, I was kind of pleased how this one turns out. It didn't kind of fit so well within the nature theme, so I kind of used it as like an interlude track to kind of link the first and second half. So yeah, let's have a look in Ableton. Okay, cool. So production wise, this one's pretty simple in terms of layers and stuff. If I start it off, I kind of get this cool sort of pitch bendy clicky, which is this plug-in cassette transport. It's by this company Waves Factory, so you can check it out. So I've got some bit reduction on here. I've got this plug-in here as well, which is by Waves, which is a kind of tape deck. So that does some sort of tape delay and some altering the quality and stuff. Some bit reduction as well, quite soft there. And then this pad actually comes from Omnisphere, and a lot of that kind of weird sound is because I've got a tiny bit of pitch modulation, so it's like changing the pitch quite quickly, but by a tiny amount. Get this lead here, which is kind of inspired by Tycho, or Ticho, and he does a lot of ambient music, which I really like. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything for Interlude. Yeah, so the second half of the album starts off with this track called Glacier, which is the longest track I've written and kind of the most ambient. So there's no drums in this track, there's no piano, it's just mostly pads and different layers of pads and kind of effects and stuff. I was really inspired by an album that Sigur Rós did called Liminal Sleep. And I think the particular track Sleep 2, which again is just kind of a really long piece of music of different pads and layers and stuff. And I really liked that kind of simplicity, but kind of when you listen to it, you can kind of pick out interesting things that are going on that kind of adds that like complexity and interest to it. So that's what I'm kind of going for here. Yeah, so let's have a look at that. So I think this was actually the second track I wrote. I think it was the first one I wrote this year. And yeah, it's a load of pads that kind of slowly build this kind of big section here and then sort of fade out again. So I'll just start it off. And this is where we get the skipping forward a bit, we get this lead here, which has kind of got a lot of glide on the pitch on it, which is really nice. I really like these kind of leads sound. And they've got another sort of textury sound on top, and that's pretty much all there is. And then we just kind of fade out at the end. So after Glacier we come to Ocean, and this is the only 6/8 track on the album. It kind of starts off with this Rhodes electric piano. I wanted a song that kind of showcased the Rhodes. I really like the sound of it. So we start off with that kind of piano loop, and then it slowly adds in ambient guitars and stuff. Now I can't play guitar, but there are guitar sounds in Omnisphere that I sort of added on top, ambient stuff and swells and things. And then it kind of also builds with some orchestral parts. And it kind of gave me this vibe of being in a boat on an ocean and the waves kind of going backwards and forwards. So that was the kind of inspiration for this track. So yeah, let's have a look in Ableton. Yeah, so this has got quite a lot of layers actually. So yeah, it starts off with the E piano. Actually, can we hear it on the organ yet? Yeah, so you can hear now I've kind of increased the attack on the organ, so you get that kind of nice sound at the start of it, which I think is really nice. Some orchestra stuff. So this sort of slowly builds. Get some more bassy stuff in here. Some other orchestra stuff. And this is a electric-y lead sound. Then we kind of get this sort of building section here, which is different. And then when we kind of resolve, chords change slightly to the A part. And then that's the end of orchestra. So we're coming near the end of the album now, with this track called Moonlight. And this is quite an upbeat track, kind of similar, I guess, to Sands. But it's kind of got a feeling of like being quite slow. So if you listen to the drum part, it kind of sounds like it's almost too slow for the song. And this was kind of inspired by a song called People of the Future by Utah. And I really like what he does in most of his music, really. We're it's kind of ambient stuff, but it's got kind of a rhythm and some percussion and some stuff to it. It's really nice stuff. So that was kind of my inspiration for this track. Yeah, so let's check it out. Yeah, so we start off with this kind of towel sound, and kind of an E piano almost sound. That's what I called it anyway. Then we get some drums. So this is recorded on my Alesis Sample Pad Pro. We kind of get the main Moog bass, which I really like. And that's sidechained, I think. Yeah, as you can see, it's sidechaining here. So it sounds really different with that sidechain. So I've got the sidechain layer up here, which is just 808, I think, which is feeding all the sidechaining. Yeah, we've got this E piano here, which is the bass on the Giant. So this is a Rhodes, I think. Yeah, it's a Rhodes with a load of... I then added in Omnisphere some like glide on it, some delay and some reverb and stuff. Yeah, so this is inspired by sounds that Knife Party used on one of their songs. Can't remember which one it is, but I really liked it, so I kind of recreated something similar. And then I really wanted to incorporate a fade out into one of my tracks, just this kind of feeling that the song goes on forever and just keeps playing and just kind of keeps looping. And I think I kind of got towards the end of the album writing and I hadn't used it anywhere, and I thought, yeah, that'll work here, and I think it works quite nicely. So yeah, this just slowly fades out basically. So the last but one track on the album is called Forest, and this was the third track that I wrote this year. And the first one using drums, which kind of come from an interesting source, which I'll show in a second. This one also has some ambient rain recordings in the background, and it kind of, when I was writing it, I was imagining kind of trees growing and a kind of forest and stuff. So that was my inspiration. Yeah, so let me show you in Ableton. Oh yeah, so this was interesting. So for this pad, if we take off all these effects, you can hear it's actually just a piano. Yeah, so it's basically the same piano sound that we've got here, and I just basically turned it into a pad by playing it again and again, adding a load of reverb on it, like really wet, and then kind of EQing out some of the stuff I didn't like. And get some glockenspiel coming in. It's quite nice. Yeah, so then here's what I was talking about, the drums. So these drums are actually the Giant. So on the Giant you can get the cinematic, which is kind of noises from the piano. Yeah, so you can hear there, it's just like noises of a piano. And if I EQ'd off the top, but then you have this kind of annoying piano-y noise, so I just like EQ'd most of that out, and then a bit of reverb. So yeah, here we got some bongo apparently. Yeah, so this is like, yeah, I did a frequency shift on this. Yeah, you kind of get a different chord here, which works quite nicely. And I like this because you kind of get the exhale note sort of finishing off. Yeah, so I hope you've kind of enjoyed this behind the scenes look at creation. I hope you enjoy the album. If you've got any comments or any thoughts on it, any tracks you like, any things you think I could have done differently, let me know in the comments below. I've got some ideas for the next album, kind of slowly getting a list together of different ideas and things, songs that have inspired me and stuff. I don't know when I'll work on that next, kind of want a bit of a break from it, but yeah, I'm sure I'll do some more music in the future. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.